They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I believe true revenge is a story that needs to be told, not just to the person who wronged you but to the entire world they fooled. 15 years of my life, I was the perfect wife to the perfect man, Dr. Michael Vance. As he stood celebrating with his mistress at his own annual fundraising gala, I calmly approached their table with a gentle smile. "Congratulations on the successful evening, darling," I said, sliding a single sealed manila envelope across the white linen. His confident smirk didn't just vanish, it shattered. He read the first line, and in his eyes, I saw the ghost of the man I once loved being replaced by a cornered animal. That single moment of triumph was born from a Tuesday morning of absolute horror, just 3 weeks prior. It all started with a scent that didn't belong. The cheap, cloying perfume of another woman. I was gathering clothes for the cleaner when I spotted Michael's golf bag, tucked away behind his perfectly arranged collection of Italian leather shoes. He told me he was called in for an emergency cardiac procedure the night before, a life-or-death situation. But inside the bag, crumpled beneath his golf shoes, was the lab coat he supposedly wore. And on the collar, a smear of waxy blood-red lipstick. It wasn't a smudge, it was a brand, a claim of ownership. And in that instant I didn't just realize he was cheating. I understood that my entire marriage, our perfect family, had been built on a foundation of lies. To the outside world, we were the Vances of Maple Creek Estates, a photo-perfect family torn from a magazine cover. Dr. Michael Vance, the brilliant cardiothoracic surgeon, the man with healing hands. And me, Ava, his devoted wife, the anchor that made his demanding life possible. We had 2 beautiful children, a sprawling colonial home with a perfectly manicured lawn, and a partnership that was the envy of our social circle. I couldn't save lives if Ava wasn't saving mine at home, he'd often say at hospital fundraisers, his arm wrapped securely around my waist. The other doctors' wives would nod with saccharine smiles, but I saw the flicker of envy, the silent judgment. They saw the success, not the sacrifice. But looking back, the warning signs were there, written in invisible ink, waiting for a moment of crisis to reveal themselves. The late-night emergency consultations became more frequent. His weekend on-call emergencies almost always coincided with major golf tournaments. Our conversations, once filled with shared dreams and laughter, became transactional, coordinating the children's schedules, discussing household maintenance, planning the social events required to advance his career. Last year, after I organized a charity auction that raised a record amount for his department, he thanked me publicly with a kiss on the cheek. But later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, he looked at me in the mirror and said, "You try a little too hard, Ava. It makes my colleagues think I need the help." The man who once couldn't bear to sleep without his hand on my back now claimed the slightest touch would disrupt his surgeon's focus. I told myself it was the pressure, the immense responsibility of holding lives in his hands. Our home, once a sanctuary, had become a beautifully decorated hotel where 2 polite strangers coexisted for the sake of the children. I refused to let our marriage die by silent neglect. I decided to fight. I read every article, every self-help book on reigniting marital passion. I bought the same brand of silk lingerie I'd worn on our honeymoon, and booked a surprise weekend at the lakeside cabin where he'd proposed. I showed him the booking confirmation on my phone, my heart pounding with a hopeful, foolish rhythm. He didn't even look up from his tablet. "I appreciate the thought, Ava," he said, his voice flat. "But the new thoracic aortic dissection protocol at the hospital needs my full attention. We can't afford distractions." He called my attempt to save our marriage a distraction. That night, I confronted him as he was loosening his tie. "Michael," I asked, my voice barely a whisper, "do you still love me?" He finally looked at me, his eyes devoid of any warmth, and said, "I'm committed to this family, Ava. Isn't that enough?" His home office became his fortress, the heavy oak door a permanent barrier between his world and mine. Late into the night, I'd hear his voice, a low murmur through the door. It wasn't the tired, clinical tone he used with me. It was softer, sometimes punctuated by a quiet laugh I hadn't heard in years. He was sharing a part of himself with someone on the other end of that line, a part that had long been dead to me. Yet I clung to my principles. I told myself that trust was the bedrock of our marriage, that checking his phone was a line I would never cross. I was Ava Vance, not some paranoid, insecure wife. And that belief, that naive, stubborn pride, was the last thing to break before the truth finally drowned me. The universe has a funny way of forcing your hand. The next morning, our daughter's school sent an urgent email. The date for the annual father-daughter dance had been changed to the following weekend. I needed to confirm with Michael immediately before replying. He was in the shower, the sound of water hissing against glass. His phone was on the nightstand charging, a black mirror reflecting my own pale, haunted face. And for the first time, my principle of trust felt not like a virtue, but like a cage I had built for myself. My only intention was to check his calendar. Just one quick look. But as my thumb hovered over the screen, it lit up with a notification. A name I didn't recognize. Dr. Isabel Reed. And a message that stopped my heart cold. Just left your office. The whole drive home, all I could think about was your hand on my back. Can't wait until Ava is just a line item in a divorce settlement. My hands, the same hands that had held my children and my husband with love, trembled as I unlocked the phone. The passcode was our anniversary. The irony was a physical blow. It wasn't a few messages. It was a novel. A chronicle of a second life stretching back not 8 months, but over a year, complete with photos and private jokes. And then I saw the final soul-destroying image, the two of them laughing in the exact same lakeside cabin where he had proposed to me 16 years ago. He had taken her to our place. That single image didn't just break my heart. It incinerated it. The past wasn't real. The present was a lie. And the future I had believed in was a ghost. I stared at our wedding photo on the wall. It looked like a painting hung in a stranger's home. I was the stranger. I quietly placed the phone back on the nightstand, exactly as I'd found it, then walked to the bathroom and was violently sick until there was nothing left but the bitter taste of betrayal. There are moments that redefine you. For me, it was the sound of the bathroom door clicking shut as I wiped the bitter taste of betrayal from my mouth. The woman who walked out was not the same one who had walked in. He came out of the shower a few moments later, a towel slung low on his hips, a picture of oblivious arrogance. "Feeling all right, honey?" he asked, his voice laced with false concern. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply held up his phone, the screen still lit with the image of him and Isabel at our lakeside cabin. "I think you need to tell me who she is, Michael." His face didn't fall with guilt. It hardened with fury. The shift was instantaneous, terrifying. "You went through my phone?" he snarled, taking a step towards me. "After everything I provide for this family, you violate my privacy like some paranoid teenager?" He was trying to make me the villain. The old Ava would have shrunk, apologized. The new Ava, born just minutes ago in the cold porcelain of our master bathroom, didn't flinch. "Your privacy ended on the collar of your lab coat, Michael. It ended in a lakeside cabin that was supposed to be ours." His eyes narrowed. "Yes," he finally hissed, the word a venomous dart. "I'm seeing her. Are you happy now? You went looking for a reason to destroy this family, and you found it." The audacity of his gaslighting was breathtaking. I whispered the one question that was left. "Why?" His laugh was the cruelest sound I had ever heard. "Why? Because I've outgrown this, Ava. I've outgrown you." He gestured around our beautiful bedroom, as if it were a prison. "I save human lives. I operate on the very edge of mortality. And I come home to what? Discussions about school fundraisers and which caterer to use for the gala? I want a divorce. In fact, my lawyer has had the papers drawn up for weeks. He'll be in touch." That night, he didn't just sleep in the guest room. He locked the door. The click of the lock was the sound of our marriage officially dying. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark of our living room, surrounded by the ghosts of a happy life, reconstructing 15 years of memories, trying to find the exact moment the rot set in. Was it last year? 5 years ago? Was it ever real at all? The sun rose on a world that felt alien, drained of color. At 7 a.m., before the children were even awake, my phone pinged. It wasn't a text from him, begging for forgiveness. It was a formal email from his lawyer, a man I'd never heard of. The email contained a preliminary settlement offer. It wasn't generous. It was a declaration of war. It offered me the house, but with a second mortgage I couldn't possibly afford, and a child support amount that was a calculated insult. It was designed to do one thing: crush me into submission. He thought that email would be the final blow. Instead, it was like a bucket of ice water to the face, waking me from a 15-year slumber. I finally understood I wasn't married to a man. I was in a business partnership with a narcissist who was now liquidating his assets, and I was one of them. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't cry. I made the children breakfast, packed their lunches with a steady hand, and then I made a phone call. Not to my mother, not to my best friend, but to Patricia Sterling, the most ruthless, feared, and effective divorce attorney in all of Chicago. Her voice on the phone was calm like steel, and her first piece of advice to me was simple. He's already shown you he'll lie about the affair, Ava. That's the amateur lie. Now we go find the professional ones. Patricia's first command was simple. Stop thinking like a wife, Ava. Start thinking like an auditor. She brought in a forensic accountant, a woman who tore through our 15-year financial history like a shark sensing blood in the water. The report came back a week later, and it was worse than I imagined. It wasn't extravagant purchases or secret credit cards. It was colder, more calculated. Monthly wire transfers, ranging from $10,000 to $15,000, to a shell corporation with a bland corporate name, Apex Medical Ventures. Over the past 2 years alone, nearly $400,000 had vanished into this corporate ghost. A ghost that, we soon discovered, was registered solely in my husband's name. This isn't just hiding money for a mistress, Ava, Patricia said, her eyes sharp over her reading glasses. This is building an escape hatch. The name. It reminds me of another case, another doctor from Michael's old research institute. And that's when I first heard the name Dr. Ezra Brooks, a brilliant geneticist who had, according to Michael years ago, retired early to a quiet life upstate. It took 4 calls to get past his protective receptionist. When I finally said Michael's name, the line went silent for a full 5 seconds. Mrs. Vance. Dr. Brooks's voice was heavy, weary. I've been waiting for this call for 5 years. We met in a dingy diner halfway between our cities. He looked 10 years older than I remembered, the weight of a secret etched into his face. He didn't start with the affair. He started with a disease, a dark secret in Michael's bloodline, early onset familial Huntington's disease, a degenerative neurological condition with a 50% chance of being passed to his children. A death sentence for a surgeon whose entire career depended on his steady hands. He couldn't risk it, Ezra whispered, his own hands trembling slightly as he held his coffee cup. His reputation, his image of genetic perfection. He couldn't risk having a child who might one day tremble like this. And then he delivered the final world-shattering blow. So during your IVF treatments, Ava, he was complicit in substituting his samples with an anonymous donor's. Your beautiful children, the ones you struggled for years to conceive, they are not his. Knowing the truth from a trusted source and holding the cold, hard proof in your hands are 2 entirely different worlds. Ezra's words had given me a map, but I was the one who had to walk through the valley of fire to get to the destination. That night I became a thief in my own home, stealing the very essence of the people I loved most. I started with our son Leo, his face so peaceful in sleep. As I gently snipped a tiny lock of his golden hair, my own hand trembled. This act, meant to uncover a lie, felt like a profound betrayal of his innocence. I did the same for our daughter Chloe, my heart aching with every silent snip of the scissors. Getting Michael's sample was the most dangerous part. He was home, sleeping just down the hall in the guest room, the door now always locked between us. But his arrogance had become my greatest ally. He'd left his electric razor on the charger in our master bathroom, the one he now treated like foreign territory. It was filled with tiny black stubble. His DNA. His carelessness would be his undoing. Sealing those 3 small samples into the discreet biohazard bag provided by the lab felt like sealing my own fate. There was no going back. I had just mailed a question to a laboratory, and the answer had the power to either save me or destroy what was left of my soul. The 2-week wait for the results was a unique form of psychological torture, all while I maintained the perfect facade for the children, smiling at school drop-offs, baking cookies, checking homework. And as if on cue, as if he could sense the truth closing in, Michael escalated his legal assault. His lawyer sent intimidating letters questioning my mental stability, citing my newfound detachment as a reason for him to seek full custody. It was then I understood. He wasn't just trying to win a divorce. He was trying to preemptively erase me, to discredit me so thoroughly that if I ever stumbled upon his ultimate secret, no one in the world would ever believe me. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, with a subject line that was brutally mundane. Your lab results are ready. I was in the kitchen, packing a snack for Chloe's soccer practice, a perfect picture of suburban motherhood, while my world was about to be torn from its axis. My finger hovered over the open button for what felt like an eternity. A part of me, the old Ava, wanted to delete it, to live in the bitter comfort of suspicion rather than the cold, hard certainty of fact. But the new Ava, the one forged in betrayal, clicked it open. I downloaded the attached PDF. I didn't even read the words at first. My eyes were drawn to the charts, the columns of genetic markers. Column A, child. Column B, mother. Match. 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 Column C, alleged father. And then just a sea of red highlighted text, like blood spilled on a sterile document. Mismatch. 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 The clinical, impersonal data was more violent than any scream, any confession. The probability of paternity, 0%. I didn't drop the phone. I didn't gasp for air. The world simply went silent. The sound of the ticking clock on the wall faded away. The hum of the refrigerator disappeared. The grief I expected didn't come. The hot rage I thought I'd feel never arrived. It was something else entirely. A profound, terrifying calm. The calm of a battlefield after the bomb has already fallen, and there's nothing left to destroy. In that silence, the old Ava, the wife who arranged flowers and wept over his coldness, finally died. And in her place, a strategist was born. This was no longer a marriage to be mourned. It was a war to be won. I walked to my home office and printed 3 copies of the report. One for my lawyer, one for a safe deposit box he knew nothing about, and one for a pristine manila envelope, the same kind of envelope he used for his important hospital business. This copy was for him. It was a receipt for 15 years of my life, and I would deliver it myself. With the DNA report locked away in my safe, my grief was gone, replaced by a chilling clarity. My fight was no longer just about a cheating husband. It was about a 15-year deception that had poisoned the very roots of my life. To understand the monster, I needed to understand his entire web of lies. And at the center of that web was Dr. Isabel Reed. I didn't find her on social media. I found her listed as a guest speaker at a university medical ethics seminar. The irony was so thick it was nauseating. I waited until she finished her talk on informed consent in genetic research. When she was alone, packing her briefcase, I approached. Dr. Reed, I said, my voice calm and even. My name is Ava Vance. I believe we have my husband in common. Her professional smile tightened, a mask of polite defense. I'm sorry, I think you're mistaken, she said, her voice low. My relationship with Michael is a private matter. She was trying to frame it as a simple, sordid affair. I didn't raise my voice. I'm not here to talk about the affair, I replied, cutting through her defense. The affair is the amateur lie. I'm here to talk about the professional ones. I invited her for coffee at a quiet, minimalist cafe nearby. She hesitated, then agreed, likely out of a mix of curiosity and arrogance. Instead of the DNA test, I slid a different document across the cold marble table. A copy of an old research paper on Huntington's disease, with a young Michael Vance listed as a junior researcher. Isabel's composure finally broke. A flicker of something, not guilt but pure, unadulterated fear, the same fear I had seen in Michael's eyes, crossed her face. What is this? She whispered, her fingers trembling as she reached for the paper. That, I said, looking her directly in the eye, is the real question. Why would a man so terrified of his own genetic legacy risk having children? Her face went pale. He told me he couldn't have children, she admitted, her voice cracking. He said it was because of a medical issue from his youth. He said I was the only one he could build a real future with, free from the complications of the past. And in that moment, the entire narrative shattered. She wasn't the victor celebrating her prize. She was just another victim of his carefully constructed reality. He hadn't just lied to me about our past. He had lied to her about their future. We weren't rivals. We were just two different women, drowning in the same man's lies. I left Isabel sitting in that cafe, a ghost at her own table. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel pity. I felt empty. The truth was a cancer, and it had metastasized, infecting not just my life but hers too. Driving back to the suburbs that night, the city lights streaking past my window in blurry lines of red and gold, something inside me shifted. My initial primal urge had been simple: destroy him. Ruin his career, take his money, leave him with nothing, just as he had planned for me. But seeing Isabel's shattered face, seeing the reflection of my own pain in my supposed rival's eyes, changed the equation. This was bigger than an affair. This was about a man who built his entire empire on deceptions, using women as bricks and mortar. Revenge suddenly felt too small, too petty. It was a hot, messy, chaotic fire that would consume everything, including the person who started it. That's when I understood what the monks call right action. Chan Neem. My purpose wasn't revenge. My purpose was truth. Truth is not a fire. It is a clean, sharp, focused light. It doesn't burn. It simply illuminates, exposing the rot that has been festering for years in the dark. My plan for the gala was no longer about humiliating a man. It was about liberating everyone he had trapped in his web. Me, my children, and even the woman he used as an escape. I pulled the car over to the side of the road, the engine humming in the quiet dark. My path was clear. I made 2 calls. The first was to Patricia, to confirm the final legal pieces were in place. The second was to a trusted friend on the hospital's event committee. I didn't need a weapon. I just needed 5 minutes and a live microphone. The night of the Ashford Charity Gala arrived on a wave of feigned smiles and the scent of expensive perfume. I walked into the grand ballroom alone. I chose to wear white, a simple, elegant ivory dress. Not the black of a woman in mourning, but the white of a clean slate, a blank page on which the truth was about to be written. I saw him almost immediately, the star of the show. He was holding court near the stage, a glass of champagne in one hand, his other arm wrapped possessively around Isabel's waist. He saw me from across the room and gave me a small, condescending nod. He thought I'd come to make a scene, to play the part of the hysterical, scorned wife. He had no idea I was there to direct the final act of his play. The award ceremony proceeded with all the pomp and circumstance he adored. The hospital chairman delivered a glowing tribute, calling Michael a pillar of the community, a man of unwavering integrity. Michael accepted the Physician of the Year award with practiced humility, delivering a hypocritical speech about the sacred trust between doctor and patient. He spoke of truth. He spoke of ethics. The crowd was mesmerized. As he finished to thunderous applause, the chairman returned to the podium, looking slightly confused as he read a last-minute change on the teleprompter. And now, the chairman announced, we have a surprise final word from a person who knows Dr. Vance's dedication better than anyone, his wife, Ava Vance. A ripple of shock, then a wave of hushed whispers went through the room. All eyes turned to me. Michael's smile froze on his face. The crystal trophy in his hand suddenly looked like a cheap prop. He tried to signal to the chairman, a look of pure panic flashing in his eyes, but it was too late. The spotlight found me as I stood up from my table at the back of the room. I walked towards that stage, my steps even and deliberate, through the sea of confused, curious faces. The room fell into a dead, expectant silence. I wasn't a guest anymore. I wasn't the supportive wife. I was the main event. I reached the podium and adjusted the microphone, my hands perfectly steady. I looked out at the sea of faces, colleagues, donors, friends, and then I smiled, a genuine, calm smile. Thank you, I began, my voice clear and carrying through the silent ballroom. It's an honor to be up here to celebrate my husband, Dr. Michael Vance. I saw Michael relax slightly, a flicker of relief in his eyes. He thought this was a gesture of reconciliation, a wife playing her part. Just now, Michael spoke about the sacred trust between a doctor and a patient. He spoke about ethics. And he's right. But I believe that sacred trust doesn't just happen in an operating room. It begins at home, in the quiet moments with the people who share your life. The mood in the room began to shift, a subtle current of confusion. Many of you know Michael as a pillar of strength, a man of perfect health. But few of you know about the secret he carries in his blood. A genetic shadow, Huntington's disease, with a 50% chance of being passed down to his children. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. I let the silence hang for a moment. A man with such a burden who still chooses to have a family, you might call that brave, wouldn't you? A testament to his love. But what if that man was so terrified of imperfection, so obsessed with his own flawless legacy, that he would do anything to ensure his children were perfect? What if he made the ultimate ethical sacrifice by ensuring his children weren't his at all? I turned my gaze from the crowd and locked eyes with my husband, who was now standing paralyzed, clutching his award like a shield. "Isn't that right, Michael?" I asked, my voice still even conversational. "Isn't it true that during our grueling rounds of IVF at the Ashford Fertility Clinic, you, a man of ethics, personally oversaw and authorized the substitution of your genetic material with that of an anonymous donor?" His face was a mask of horror. I then held up the manila envelope I'd been carrying. "This isn't a speech. This is a lab report. It is the cold, clinical proof of a 15-year lie. It states that the probability of your paternity to the children you have raised as your own is 0%. I placed the envelope gently on the podium. "So yes, let's give him another round of applause. Congratulations on your award, doctor. You have truly perfected the art of playing God, both in the hospital and in your own home." For a full 10 seconds, the only sound in the grand ballroom was the hum of the air conditioning. And then a sharp shattering crash. Michael's Physician of the Year award had slipped from his numb fingers and exploded on the marble stage. 1,000 tiny shards of crystal glittering like the ruins of his reputation. That sound broke the spell. "She's lying," he finally choked out, his voice a desperate, ragged cry that echoed unnaturally. "She's mentally unstable. Our divorce, it's made her vindictive. She's making it all up." But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I simply looked at him from the podium, not with hatred, but with a profound, empty pity. My silence was more damning than any accusation. It told everyone in the room that his words were the frantic gasps of a drowning man. The hospital chairman and 2 other board members were on the stage in an instant. They weren't looking at me. They were looking at Michael with the cold, hard eyes of men, assessing a massive, catastrophic liability. But my eyes were on Isabel. She slowly stood up from her front row table. She didn't look at Michael, her partner in deception. She didn't look at me, her supposed rival. She simply turned her back on the entire spectacle and walked, with a quiet, broken dignity, towards the exit alone. Her exit was a confession in itself. The board members flanked Michael, a human shield of tailored suits, and guided, or rather pushed, him off the stage through a side exit, away from the hundreds of cell phone cameras that were now flashing like a sudden thunderstorm. He wasn't arrested by police, not yet. He was absorbed by the corporate machine, erased from public view to contain the damage. The gala was over. The story I knew was just beginning. The aftermath was exactly as you'd expect. A maelstrom of headlines, lawsuits, and a scandal that rocked the city's medical community to its core. Michael's medical license was suspended indefinitely. The fertility clinic was shut down pending a federal investigation. Dozens of other families came forward, their perfect family photos now tainted with doubt, all seeking answers. But I found that I watched it all from a distance, as if reading about a storm in a faraway land. My war wasn't won in a courtroom or a newspaper headline. It was won in the silence of my own home, weeks later. One evening I was sitting in the quiet, watching my children sleep, their chests rising and falling in the soft glow of a nightlight. The DNA report was just a file on my computer now, a cold hard fact. But looking at their peaceful faces, I felt a love so fierce and absolute that it existed beyond science, beyond genetics. It wasn't born from a lab. It was born from late-night feedings, scraped knees, bedtime stories, and thousands of moments of pure, unconditional connection. It was simply mine. And that's when the last chain of bitterness broke. For months I thought I was fighting for justice, for revenge. But looking at them, I was wrong. I didn't feel like a victor. I just felt free. I used to think I needed justice for his lies. But in reality, what I needed was the truth. Not to make him kneel, but so that I could finally stand up straight without having to lie to anyone, and most importantly to myself. The truth didn't set him free. It set me free. My story had a dramatic end, but for so many people, these quiet betrayals happen every day. Not on a gala stage, but in the silence of a home. It makes you wonder, what is the fine line between unconditional trust and willful ignorance? Where does our responsibility to believe in others end, and our responsibility to seek the truth for ourselves begin? If my story resonated with you, and you believe in the power of bringing truth into the light, please support our community by hitting that subscribe button and turning on all notifications. Every subscription helps us share more stories of strength and resilience. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because your voice matters. Thank you for listening.